Thank you. Welcome everybody to our SACRE meeting this afternoon. Obviously meeting online rather than in person as we would normally do. I'm going to start the meeting just by asking everybody to introduce themselves, and just for the benefit of everyone else, if you could say which group within SACRE that you are a member of, that would be really helpful. If I don't know whether you can see the same screen as me, so if I just take each person in turn and ask them to introduce themselves. So Councillor Riley.
Yeah, hello there everybody. My name is Councillor Martin Rowley. I believe I'm in Group C. I'm an elected Conservative member, and I sit on this panel as a representative of the Conservative group.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Sorry, I'm there now. Yes, I'm Councillor Fitzpatrick, a Labour member for the Guildhall ward, so I'm in Group C.
Thank you. John Thompson.
Yes, hello, I'm John Thompson. I'm the head of secondary and skills in schools effectiveness and achievement, and I'm the local authority officer supporting the SACRE.
Thank you, John. Tracy.
Hello, my name's Tracy Copestake. I'm in Group A because I am the Quaker representative on the group. I'm also a teacher at a Quaker school, Bootham School.
Thanks, Tracy. Councillor Culloch.
Good afternoon, Chris Colwick. I'm a councillor for Huntington, New Ipswich, a Liberal Democrat councillor, and serve therefore in the capacity as part of the Group C.
Thank you. And Keith Albans.
Yeah, Keith Albans, Methodist Superintendent in York and part of Group A.
Dariush. If you could just unmute yourself, Dariush, please.
Forgot about that one. Dariush Mazloom, from part of Group A, representing the Baha'i faith.
Thank you, Dariush. And Ben?
Hi, I'm Ben Rich. I'm part of Group A. I'm a representative of the York Liberal Jewish community.
And Councillor Cuthbertson?
Hello, Councillor Ian Cuthbertson, Executive Member for Children, Young People and Education on City of York Council. I'm a Liberal Democrat councillor, and following the precedent of my three fellow councillors, I should be in Group C. But it's interesting that the SACRE reference handbook says that I should be in Group D.
Yes, local authority officers are Group D. That's correct. Thank you. And Catherine?
Hi, I'm Catherine Harper. I'm in Group B representing the Church of England, and I'm also a teacher at Archbishop Holgate School, which is a Church of England academy in York.
Thank you, Catherine. And Jenny?
Hello, I'm Janie Berry. I'm the Director of Governance at City of York Council and here to support the meeting this afternoon.
Thanks, Jenny. And Penny?
Hello, I'm Penny Siddall. I'm in Group A as I represent the faith of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Thank you. And we also have Angela, who's clerking our meeting.
I am Angela Bealby, Democracy Officer to SACRE.
Thank you. And I should probably introduce myself, shouldn't I? Olivia Seymour, and I'm Interim Chair of SACRE, and I sit on Group B as a Church of England representative. So if we just look at the agenda, one of the first items on the agenda is the election of chair. And just to make you aware, as I'm sure many members know, over the last 18 months I've been interim chairing the committee because there has not been a member within the committee who felt able to step into the chair role. one of the things that we have been liaising with Democratic Services, because according to the SACRE guidance, where there is not somebody within the committee who feels willing or able to step into the chair role, then it is the responsibility of the local authority to nominate a chair. And Councillor Cuthbertson has been identified as a possible chair of the committee. And according to our constitution, the election of chair takes place in the autumn term meeting. So this is just to make you aware that in that autumn term meeting, we will fulfil our responsibilities of electing a chair. Of course, other members are welcome to stand for the chair role if they wish to. And prior to that meeting, we will circulate the job description, if you like, for the chair, which comes from the National Association of SACRE's guidance. And we will also share the constitution that goes through the process that we take in order to elect the chair. So just to make members aware of that for the autumn term, so that we have a substantive chair rather than continuing with an interim chair for the role. But with obviously members' permission this evening, I will continue in that interim chair role for this meeting, and then hopefully we will resolve that issue in the autumn term. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Chair. Not that it maybe has any bearing, but maybe what I should have said at the beginning when I introduced myself is that I'm also a governor at Archbishop Holgate School.
Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you very much. So if there are no questions about that first item of election of chair, then we'll move on to our apologies for absence and declarations of interest. And I'll look here to Angela to tell me of any apologies that she's received.
Yes, we've had apologies from Ian Hodgson.
Thank you. So that's from Group A of the committee. Ian Hodgson is our humanist representative. Thank you. So we've no other apologies, but we only have representation this evening from 3 of our 4 groups. So I think it's important at this point just to note that we're not quorate. We were not quorate at the previous meeting either. And so the minutes from the last meeting and the minutes from this meeting will need to be carried over into our autumn term meeting for approval. And it does mean that we won't be able to make any formal decisions this evening, but we will need to seek to be quorate for the autumn term, particularly whenever I talk to you about item number 7 and the agreed syllabus review. There are some legal decisions that SACRE needs to make in the autumn term regarding the agreed syllabus. So we will work with Democratic Services to ensure that our membership is correct for the autumn term. So can I then ask if there are any declarations of interest that have not already been declared? No. Okay, thank you. So I will hand over at this point then to John Thompson, who will be speaking to item number 4, which is the update from the local authority. Oh, apologies, Councillor Cuthbertson.
Sorry, Chair, I was a little slow in raising my hand there. I'm not sure if I need to declare an interest, but my wife and I are members of the community of York Minster.
Okay, that's great.
I just want to make that out in the open from the word go. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will hand over now to John Thompson, our local authority officer for SACRE, to speak to item number 4, which is an update from the LA on officer roles.
Okay, thank you very much, Olivia. First of all, colleagues, this is my first SACRE, so please be gentle. First of all, I have to acknowledge that my predecessor as the principal LA supporter of the SACRE, Mike Jory, our secondary advisor, he is now into a period of flexible retirement, no longer working full time with us. And so we've had to redistribute some of his job role. In the first instance, I'm picking up the support for SACRE. I'd also like to acknowledge the fantastic work that Olivia has done over the last 18 months as interim chair. Olivia has a kind of interesting role within this committee because obviously she's told you all that she represents Group B, but we also have used Olivia as a special advisor to SACRE and to the local authority on RE matters because we do not ourselves have a specialist RE advisor within our effectiveness and achievement team. And Olivia and Mike have done a great deal to keep things moving. I'm pleased Janie is here with us this evening, and also colleagues from Democratic Services, because what we wanted to do as part of this transition was to effectively try and future-proof SACRE, which is a statutory committee of the local authority, and to put it on to the same footing as all of the other statutory committees, so that it actually led a more secure and sustainable life, rather than actually relying on a tremendous amount of goodwill on the part of various members. And our objective is that we get to a position where our SACRE is sustainable and not dependent on either individual officers or individual members. And so this is kind of a first step down that road. Now, where we are is therefore that we've almost got a kind of a division of the back office of SACRE that will now emerge, so that our colleagues in Democratic Services will be responsible for organising the minutes, putting together agendas, distribution of papers, all of that kind of logistics around meetings. And when we get to a situation where we can do this all face to face, they'll also organise the venue and all of that sort of thing. On the other side of the house, all of the interactions with schools directly, and the provision of resources to support delivery of RE in schools, and the regular drip of information that will go through the Effectiveness and Achievement Service and the administrative support there, and in particular we'll be aiming to maximise the use of the York Education website, which is available to all schools in the city, and they can have logins for all of their teachers and also for all of their governors. And so, you know, that is a platform that we use widely to share resources with schools, and we will continue to do that. And so in terms of the more schools facing work that goes on around a SACRE, that will remain, that half of the back office, if you like, will remain with our service. I think at this stage, that's all I've got to say, other than we started to sort of discuss this during the course of the spring term, and Maxine Squire, who's the Assistant Director for Education and Skills, started to discuss it with Mike, I and Olivia, and also Janie. And as you know, we've had events have sort of got in the way of a lot of the things that everybody has been hoping to do over the last 3 months. And therefore, you know, I have to apologise for the fact that we have, with colleagues in Democratic Services, rather scrabbled to make sure that we got a meeting in before the end of the current school year, in order that we could make clear what the direction of travel would be going forward. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, John. And so there will be, I presume, a further update at the autumn meeting about the officer roles linked with SACRE and the different aspects of SACRE's work once we've moved a bit further in that direction of travel.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. So if we can just then move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the minutes of the meeting that was held on the 7th of January 2020. If I just propose that we just take each page for factual accuracy first, and then we'll take the actions at the end. Obviously, we can't formally sign these off until the next meeting, but we can make a record of that. So if I just take page 1 first of all. Page 2. And then page 3. Are we happy to say that they were an accurate record of the meeting? I shall take those nods and thumbs up as approval. Thank you. There are a long list of actions from that meeting. So what I'll do is just talk us through those and where there have been some delays due to the current situation, I will do my best to highlight those. So the first action was about adding membership to the next meeting agenda. As you know, as John has already spoken about, the move to Democratic Services membership is a part of that ongoing conversation and will need to be an agenda item for the next meeting. We do have some gaps in our membership, particularly in Committee A and in Committee C, which is our teacher representation. And so we do need to look at how we can appropriately fill those vacancies. Councillor Rowley.
Sorry, Chair, you said Group C, but I thought Group C was councillors.
Sorry. No, Group C is teachers. Group D is the local authority.
Right.
And Group C is teacher and head teacher associations.
In which case I'm Group D. I gave you the indication that I was Group C and nobody shot me down.
Sorry.
The same for the other councillors as well.
We, of course, can't approve the minutes from the 8th of July 2019 meeting or the January meeting. So this is the third meeting in a row where we've not been quorate, hence why the membership conversation is particularly important. And I will come back to that when we look at agenda item 7, but we will, of course, hope to be quorate at the next meeting to approve all of those. In terms of adding monitoring questionnaires to the next meeting, this has been part of the handover conversation between Mike and John, and Naomi obviously was looking into that for us previously. Monitoring questionnaires had been submitted to the last SACRE meeting, and had it not been for the recent events in schools, we would be much further forward with that. But in our autumn term meeting, we will need to revisit the number of actions on there that are to do with standards in RE and monitoring in schools. It wouldn't be appropriate to do that in the current circumstances, but we will carry that on. Apologies, Ben.
Apologies myself. I've got an urgent work thing which I just need to deal with. It will take me I'll stay on the call and listening, but I need to deal with this for about 5 minutes.
Thank you, Ben. Verifying and amending the annual report date and checking previous membership correct in the annual report. Inserting collective worship monitoring sentence into the annual report and circulating a final draft. All of those were done and members were circulated the annual report. Myself and Mike were due to go to scrutiny committee and talk about that annual report in March, but then events overtook everything. So that normal process of the annual report going to the scrutiny committee has not happened on this occasion. But of course, that process will revert to normal when the situation changes. But the annual report has been submitted as we're legally required to, and all of the changes that were required were made. Just following down those items, the key training priorities going on the meeting agenda. Given the current situation, again, that's another item that is not being possible to address at this time, but in the autumn term, that will be something as SACRE that we need to look at the training needs for our schools and what we're going to prioritise. Again, I will come back to that in agenda item 7 because it all links in with our next steps with the agreed syllabus. Again, the 2 actions about the Ofsted mechanisms. Again, there, as many of you will know, Ofsted inspections are currently suspended because of the current situation and may not also be as we previously had for a little while. And so we will need to, again, just revisit that in the autumn term and as part of our monitoring role for SACRE. John, do you want to speak at this point?
Yeah, I just wanted to say about that clearly pretty quickly around Easter time, Ofsted withdrew from inspecting schools this term. They've announced in the last week that they will be undertaking inspection visits to school between September and Christmas, but they will be on a monitoring visit model. For those people who are Ofsted geeks, Section 5 is a full inspection with a team. Section 8 is a one-day visit, usually a single inspector, and the focus of those visits next term will clearly, well, Ofsted are clearly saying will be on quotes the recovery plans that schools are making following the periods of closure for substantial numbers of pupils. So I have to say that we wouldn't be expecting anything specifically relating to the RE agenda to come out of any Ofsted inspections this side of 2021.
And just to relate to that, obviously there were a number of changes to the Ofsted framework last year and some implications for RE. And whilst inspections may look different for some time, there will still be some implications to do with the new Ofsted framework we'll need to consider when we move to item 7 and the review of the syllabus. Because whilst there's conversations about, or there are hints, we haven't heard anything official yet, but there are hints of narrowing of curriculum, etc. for next academic year. SACRE will have a responsibility in terms of the statutory nature of RE within the curriculum and the advice that we give to schools, and that is something when we have a clearer picture for next academic year we will need to consider in the autumn term. So just to finish off then the action points, in terms of the action plan, again, the action plan and key priorities and next steps that were discussed previously, those items were worked on and they will come to the autumn term meeting as part of that handover between Mike and John and the LA officer role. And just one last thing to mention about those minutes. As you will know from previous meetings, we had got some way in liaising with the Board of Deputies about hosting the Jewish Living exhibition. And then, of course, because of the current situation, those things have stalled. So again, I think that will be another item that we will need to bring back to the autumn term meeting. Ben, do you want to speak at this point?
Just to say, we had a good 2.5 months before anything happened with COVID to try and see if we could identify a venue. We were looking at February and we got as far as discussions about the Minster, but I never heard anything really back from Maxine after she said that that was what she was trying to do. And so I was rather frustrated, really.
Okay, if we minute that then we follow up with Maxine. I don't know what those conversations were, but we can follow up and see about how we then bring that to the conversation for next academic year. Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Sorry, I just wanted to say thank you to Ben, and I know how much work went into that, and it's a real shame that what we had planned was unable to go forward. I also want to say on that I have mentioned it to the Human Rights Board. It was in the minutes previously that I would just let them know, and of course everyone was supportive of that. So I'm just sorry that it didn't happen, and particularly sorry for Ben.
Thank you, and we will, I think it's important that we minute that we will pursue that for the autumn term to look at having the exhibition. Councillor Rowley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As previously mentioned, I'm afraid I'm going to have to absent myself from the meeting now, so I'm just going to leave. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And so that's the actions from the previous meeting. So if we just move back to the agenda, we now have an update from the Chair on support for schools during this time. Again, this is a brief update, really just to make SACRE members aware of what support has been provided to schools since, well, the languages closure, but we know that schools were not closed, and there has been a period of restricted opening and then wider reopening. And so for many schools, it was about supporting resources for home learning. And so one of the things that as interim chair, working with John and Mike, we have been providing both national and signposts to national and local resources that both primary and secondary schools could use to ensure there was high quality home learning opportunities for pupils with RE. So a whole host of resources were put onto the City of York website and sent to schools as they came in. Some of those resources came through my regional ambassador role as RE, but we used that time effectively to make sure that schools got what they needed. One of the other things that was sent to schools during this time was an update on the agreed syllabus that again was sent round members as well. Our current syllabus as an RE Today syllabus, part of that means that if there are any updates, national updates, then there are appendices that are written for the syllabus. And the appendix that was sent out to schools 3 months ago was about how the syllabus meets the requirements of the new Ofsted framework, and it was a document to support schools in planning for curriculum progression. So there has been ongoing support for schools and developmental work for RE going to schools during this time. One of the other things that has continued is through our partnership with Learn, Teach, Lead RE, some of the subject knowledge workshops that had been planned for face-to-face, we managed to move online. So the humanism workshop for primary and secondary, they were still able to go ahead as online workshops hosted by Humanists UK. And so there were, over 2 days, there were 60 teachers from across the region, including a number of York teachers that attended that event. And I think there's probably a question for us as SACRE ongoing when we think about training. The online training has proved popular in that teachers have found it very accessible and being able to log on at the end of the school day and access some high quality training much more simply than trying to dash out of school and get to a venue. So that might be something for us to think about in the autumn term when we're thinking about the training that we offer. to our schools. I don't know, John, if you want to add anything to that or if that covers.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Olivia in particular for all of the stuff that she sent through, which has gone out to colleagues in schools. You know, I know it's been pretty frantic for everybody all the way across the board, and it's certainly been pretty frantic for schools and pretty frantic for us trying to support them. But I think it's probably true to say that heads of RE have received more in terms of support and suggested resources than any other subject leaders in our secondary schools directly through the supporting body of SACRE, and in particular Olivia as the embodiment of that. So yeah, you know, what unfortunately I'm not in a position to sort of talk about is the impact of that, although it's really pleasing to hear that York teachers picked up on the online training opportunity and attended. And so, you know, clearly what we can deduce from that is that the stuff that's been going out has been read, but what difference it's making to pupils' learning, I wouldn't want to comment about. And obviously, one of the things that has been going on, particularly in secondary schools, where the number of or the year groups that are in school at the moment are limited, and the proportion of those year groups that can be in at any one time are limited. You know, there certainly has been quite an opportunity to do some planning in terms of what you're going to deliver in 2020-21. I would say that in primary schools, I mean, certainly in our primary schools, we've got a situation where effectively, due to the health guidance or the guidance on protective measures, to run, you need twice as many teachers and twice as many classrooms. And so, you know, virtually every teacher who has been able to be in front of a group of children has been. So I would probably say that you know, they've had less time to internalize, but nonetheless, you know, there's been stuff there that they can incorporate, you know, almost kind of ready-made in a sense for use in classes if it was needed. So thanks very much, Olivia. Thank you.
Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Yes, I'd just like to add to what John says. Wearing a different hat, I am a teacher and an Ofsted inspector. And obviously, I think John's quite right. The local authority will have done their best to make sure the resources are out there. Just a slight caveat that there's no guarantee that there's been enough. In fact, we know there hasn't been enough IT equipment for pupils at home to actually be receiving any kind of homeschooling in some cases. I'm particularly thinking of the minority groups like travellers, for example. So yes, that's not anything to do with SACRE, but I just wanted to make the point that as far as possible, schools are ensuring that pupils are having access to homeschooling.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to item 7, which is the agreed syllabus review. And you have a document that was provided for you that is an overview from the National Association of SACREs that just outlines what our legal responsibilities are. So just for the benefit of new members or those who have not been part of the 5-year cycle of review before, that SACRE as a statutory committee of the local authority has some legal responsibilities for producing the curriculum of RE for schools in the local authority. Now that curriculum is provided for community and voluntary controlled schools. Academies have some freedoms of choosing an agreed syllabus, but they do have to follow an agreed syllabus, and certainly in the local authority of York, many of our academies have continued with the York agreed syllabus when they became academies. So we do have a legal responsibility for that curriculum, and it is to be reviewed every 5 years. And so what that means is by the end of next academic year, our current agreed syllabus will have finished, and we will have needed to have provided a new syllabus that will be from 2021 onwards. As part of that legal responsibility, we need to set up something called an agreed syllabus conference, which is a separate entity from the SACRE itself. And the paper that you have in front of you just outlines what those statutory requirements are, because it is the agreed syllabus conference that is actually the statutory body that recommends the agreed syllabus to the SACRE and then to the local authority. In practice, and what we have done previously, is that we have had agreed syllabus conference meetings either before or after a SACRE meeting to enable members to attend both, for example, but alongside that, making sure that those agreed syllabus conference meetings work at a time that can enable, for example, teacher voice and teacher representation to be a part of the consultation process. There is no guidance that says how many times that body has to meet, but it does have obviously some very clear responsibilities, and it does follow the same group structure as SACRE. So an agreed syllabus conference does need to have representation from the 4 groups within the SACRE. And so one of the things that we will need to do in the autumn term is hold our first agreed syllabus conference meeting, and our SACRE meeting will then need to make some decisions about what we're going to do for the review of the syllabus. And then depending on what decision is made will depend on then what further actions will need to be taken in order for that syllabus to be finalised, because there would need to be a launching, if that's the appropriate word, of the syllabus in the spring or early summer term to give teachers time to digest that and ready to use it for the autumn of 2021. So one of the other things that you were provided with as members of SACRE was outlining the options that are available to us. We're not making any decisions this evening, but those options are there ready for us as SACRE members to be reflecting, and also where appropriate consulting our faith bodies that are feeding into this process. Obviously, we have a current syllabus that certainly feedback from training and feedback from work with schools over the last year, schools seem very happy with it. But one of the things I think as SACRE we will need to consider is some next steps before the next SACRE meeting of, for example, a short questionnaire that goes out to all schools so that when we're making decisions, we have feedback from all of our schools about what works well with the current syllabus and what they might feel that they need that is not currently in that syllabus. But there are some national changes that we also need to be very mindful of as SACRE members. 2 in particular, the new Ofsted framework and a particular focus on the intent and implementation and impact of our curriculum. It will be important that any syllabus equips and supports our schools to be able to tell the story of RE and its intent and implementation in their school. And we also have the Commission for RE, which we have talked about at previous meetings. And the Commission for RE set out some expectations for RE nationally, including the work on religions and worldviews, that any new syllabus, we would need to consider what we include as a result of the findings of that national report. So we can do one of four things really. We can choose to keep the syllabus we have with no changes and choose to continue to adopt that. Our syllabus is in partnership with RE today, so that would be a renewing of that licence that enables us then to have an updated 2016 to 2021 syllabus. We could choose to adopt a different syllabus from a different local authority or a different provider. We could choose to commission a bespoke syllabus and write our own syllabus. And they are the things that we will need to consider. All of those, of course, have different pros and cons that are outlined in that paper. But the key things that we need to, following this meeting, do, I think, is we will need to work with Democratic Services for dates for our autumn SACRE meeting, but also include an agreed syllabus conference as part of that to start the legal process. And I would welcome views of members about ways in which we might consult teachers, because teacher voice will be a very important part of what we do here. So for my suggestion, for example, of working with education in City of York to produce a questionnaire that goes out to teachers so that we have some feedback to consider. But we might also want to consider face-to-face consultation with teachers and opportunities for that as well. So that paper outlines our legal responsibilities, outlines the options available to us, and we will need to make some decisions in our autumn term meeting. Ben.
I'd be pleased to hear from Democratic Services where we attempted to do surveys before we've got any sort of response. My best guess is to get anything meaningful, we probably need some one-to-one meetings anyway. I just think we're not going to get much feedback, which probably means going into schools ourselves, and I'm happy to do that. We should have a agreed framework of questions.
I'm happy to work with colleagues at the local authority to try and facilitate that as best I can.
Thank you. I know that previously when we did questionnaires for the previous syllabus, we did have a good return because of the local networks. So one thing that if we want to do some face-to-face consultation, we do have termly RE network meetings that are well attended, and we could, for example, put very clearly and make sure that all schools are aware that that could be part of the consultation process. That's a good way of teachers, RE teachers, coming together and having conversations about what works well, alongside potentially some visits to school if that is appropriate and helpful. I guess it will depend on what the parameters are of visitors to schools in the autumn term. John?
Yeah, I just support what Olivia said there about the subject leader networks and the teacher network. Those meetings are effectively facilitated by Pathfinder Teaching School, and the schools collectively contribute to their cost. They haven't yet made a decision as to continue them next year, but they will be making that in the next couple of weeks, and I would anticipate that they will continue. I would, also say that support what Olivia says around the engagement of RE teachers in our schools. They are very committed to teaching their subject and to making sure they're properly tooled up. That may not be reflected in necessarily, by the fact that there isn't anybody from the teacher grouping here today, but I can assure you that it is the case that they are a very engaged group. And also to support Olivia's sort of questioning as to whether what the kind of nature of dialogue with teachers might be in the autumn term, I think it's probably far more likely that would have to be through the means of a virtual conference, a conference call kind of arrangement than actually into direct visits to schools. I think it's absolutely clear that schools are going to be very complicated places organisationally in the autumn, and it's going to be very difficult to get anything going there. As a service, we're already looking at how we can interact with large groups of schools using the platforms that are available within the local authority, and the recent upgrade to the Skype for Business platform, which is our standard. And we are looking at within our team training people around using it for webinar and other opportunities. So, you know, I would certainly be confident that we can get some feedback from schools. I'd also say that I would support Olivia's conclusion that the RE Today model has been very well received. It has. It's got a comprehensive support. We've alluded to the fact that there's a kind of an update has been sent out and all of those sorts of things. It provides a high level of service, and you know, in that respect, is very much welcomed by the school community and the teacher community. Thank you.
Thank you, John. One thing just to highlight that obviously over the last 2 years, we've continued support and training for the agreed syllabus. And we have provided training for schools because we are conscious that subject leaders change over time. And at the previous meeting, I know Mike brought feedback from that training. And again, that did support that teachers have found the syllabus really helpful and really comprehensive. I think some of the things that we will need to consider as part of our decision is what change is necessary and how much change we want to make in the current climate for our schools. And so that's where I think a questionnaire to our schools is important, because there are some national changes to Ofsted, for example, that we do need to consider, albeit our schools have already got an update to the syllabus about that. But we also need to be mindful of, given the current situation, that the pressure our schools are under. And so we need to be mindful about how we would introduce any new syllabus, how we would provide training and support ongoing for any implementation of that syllabus. So our decisions won't just be about the content and the curriculum itself. Our decisions will also be about how we launch that syllabus and the training and support that would need to go alongside that syllabus over the next 5 years to support schools in the delivery of it. I'm happy to take any questions, but obviously, because we're not quora and we can't make any decisions this evening, what I would propose that we do is that we bring that paper back to our autumn term meeting. But with the committee's permission, I'm happy to liaise with the local authority about a questionnaire for schools. So at least at our autumn term meeting, we have some initial feedback from schools, and then we plan the face-to-face or virtual agreed syllabus conferences that ensures wide consultation from our committee members and from teachers across the authority. So there may well be some communication in between meetings about the next steps as we need to take them. Any further questions about the process so far? Great, thank you. So in terms of the agenda, we've covered what we can of item number 7 and the legal process that we need to undertake. I haven't received any other business before the meeting. And the last item is the date and time of the next meeting. And I'm conscious because of the move to democratic services, they have not yet been sorted. So one of the things that John and myself will need to do is just liaise with democratic services about the dates for the autumn term meetings, well, for the meetings for the academic year, but particularly the autumn term, because we will need to agree dates for the SACRE meetings themselves, but also the agreed syllabus conferences that we have to hold. We will, of course, in the autumn term meeting also need to talk about the annual report, because that needs to be submitted in January. And I haven't yet heard if there will be any wriggle room and when we need to submit an annual report next year, but I will keep searching for that. Keith, sorry, you wanted to speak.
I was just going to say, we talked about this before, about the question of times and venues. Yes. Again, specifically with a view to helping to get teachers present, which clearly is still an issue for us. So has there been any progress in that direction?
That was raised. I did raise that previously, but we've now had this crossover. So that will be an important part of the consideration of timing and venues. My personal view is if we're holding an agreed syllabus conference where we want teacher consultation, holding it in a school would be perhaps a helpful thing to do. But I recognise that with the current situation with COVID, that may not be possible in the autumn term, but we will certainly explore ways in which we can maximise contribution from teachers.
I'll be in touch with dates as soon as I can.
Thank you. Tracy?
Thank you.
A personal plea, this Zoom meeting, I don't know how hard it is to set up for everybody, but I would have thought it makes it a lot easier for everybody to be here. And there's no parking issues and all the other problems that we've talked about in the past.
Absolutely. And I think we will have to, that will be part of what we explore, is how we can ensure that the committee and as a statutory committee can function as effectively as possible. So we will also work on that as well. Councillor Fitzpatrick?
Yes, just to say finally, I'm glad that we have sorted out the chair role, and we're going to deal with that next time. I'm pleased about that. And just to say thank you to you. I know how nervous you were at the start today, but you have done brilliantly. So well done.
Thank you. And thank you all for the support, and thank you to John. I know we've been working on the handover. It's been really good to work with everybody. So this in theory is my last meeting as interim chair, but not my last meeting of the committee. I'm still a member of the committee and obviously still providing some professional RE advice at the moment. But thank you all for your time this evening. If there are no further questions, then I will officially end the meeting, and we will be in touch soon with dates for the autumn term. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia.
Yeah, thank you, Olivia.